Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, hello. Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, that's a little bit better. I mean, I came all the way to Kalamazoo and I had summer clothes on and it's freezing outside, so the least you could do is say hello. Hello. Yes, John, awesome job. Awesome job. Another round of applause. Absolutely awesome. You gave us the what, so what, and now we're going to talk about the now what. But before I jump into introducing which we have, by the leadership of Frank and his team, assembled an all-star panel lineup. I mean, the cream of the crop is here today to share with you what they're doing to wrap their heads around these 12 mega trends that John referenced for us. I just want to take a moment to say again, thanks to Frank for organizing this, but I also want to acknowledge my friends at Kellogg's for sponsoring my particular participation in the program. So, Dave, thank you a lot. I appreciate that. And Joy, thank you for the referral to this great organization. And I really do mean that this organization is great because it is bringing you the information, the knowledge, the insights that you need in order to do something that I refer to as jumping the curve. And so to really take what John said and think about what it means to you, I'm going to set up our panel discussion by asking you to really open your minds and think about what you're going to do when you go back to your respective organizations tomorrow or the next day. Because to wrap our heads around these kinds of changes, and our industry has changed. It's not changing, it has changed. But to wrap our head around these changes, we're going to have to build new leadership capability. Now, the way that you prioritize what you focus on first of the 12 mega trends is going to be determined by what facet you are at in terms of your scope of responsibility in the business. But let us not be mistaken. Every one of us and every employee within our respective organizations are going to have to build new capabilities for us to remain relevant and for us to continue to gain a competitive advantage. And so what we want to do in the time that we have, the panelists and I, and John, we're going to ask you to come on up and sit and chat with us as well. We want to have a conversation, and we want you to be a part of the conversation. So there are going to be some folks roaming around the room with mics. If the Spirit moves you and you've got a question for one of the panelists, I want you to join in and just stand up and I will get to you so that we have an interactive discussion. Because this whole effort and theme around connecting people, issues, and solutions is only going to come to life if we leave here committed to doing something. Is that a fair deal? Yes, audience participation, that's a fair deal. Okay, so to help me engage in this conversation, as I said, Frank and his team have just done yeoman's work in putting together an all-star lineup. Some of these individuals I am actually meeting for the first time in my life today. I've read about them from afar, and so I'm just going to be calling out their names and their titles because of the interest of time. But I just will share with you, every one of them is deep into the midst of dealing with these 12 mega trends, and they're here to share how they've wrapped their head around building these new capabilities. So Carla Cooper, President and CEO of Damon Worldwide, would you please join me to the stage? J.K. Szymanczyk, Chief Operating Officer now for the Myers organization, would you please join me here to the stage? Darcy Mackin, Senior Vice President at the Kellogg's organization. Welcome, Darcy. Rob Bartles, President and CEO of Martin's Supermarkets organization. Please join me at the stage. And Monica Heisel, Vice President at the Abbott Nutrition organization. Please come on and join us up at the stage. And John, since you have just filled our head with data overload, you come on up so you can help me explain this all, okay? So we're just going to, as I said, engage in a little bit of a conversation. Welcome back. And again, thank you to all of you for making time to be out and chatting with the group. And I just want to again remind you guys to be thinking about what questions that you have. JK, I'm going to actually start with you.
All right.
And, you know, in John's presentation, he talked about this notion of circulars going away. So, as an executive of a supermarket organization, how are you guys adapting your model to engage with your consumer?
Well, I mean, you know, it's funny. It's like everything else. I think there is probably the best answer I can give you today is that there are more choices for how you communicate with customers than there ever were before. You have an awful lot of people, many in this room, who haven't picked up a newspaper or a circular in years. You have a number of people who wouldn't dream of starting Sunday morning without a newspaper and without a circular. And our challenge is we got to communicate to all those folks. Social media, I think, is one of the big areas where we're certainly investing a lot of time. You heard John's numbers. 50% of the U.S. population is engaged in some form of social media. 87% of consumers are referencing a purchase online. I think the biggest thing that we would tell you is that people do what they've always done, look for information the easiest and simplest way they can find it. You've got to be relevant. You've got to put it in the voice that they want to hear it. And then you've also got to figure out, I think probably the one biggest difference in moving from a paper, sort of push world to any of the things that John was talking about is it is no longer a monologue, it's a dialogue. So you've got to have the ability to listen as much as what you communicate, whether that's in the form of how you recognize, collect, and analyze data, whether that's just having a conduit of information back from those customers to you. If you don't do that well, then you're not going to be successful as you make the transition.
Yeah, I absolutely concur with you. Rob, you want to add anything to that?
Well, as an overstimulated retailer, after seeing that presentation, there's just a flood of ideas that come to mind. And I think one thing that's important is the precision with which we answer those customers' questions and needs. As they approach a world that is increasingly dizzying and complex, regardless of device, they're counting on us as retailers to understand their context, but also understand the products we sell. And whether that's foodways, whether that's special needs, whether that's special interests, folks are approaching our products, the products we sell, in a very flexible way, and we need to understand what it takes to be precise with our message. And I think one other item there is that they need us to remember it on their behalf. And I think that is a change in how information has been presented in the past. We've given them circulars, we've given them coupons, we've given them websites that they can look at, but they're going to need us to keep track of information on their behalf so they can use what we have, get what they need, and put it to rest.
So no doubt, again, for everybody in here, the social media component of how we connect with consumers has to be top of mind. But that's just one of the mega trends. I mean, one of the things that was really profound to me, perhaps because I have an 85-year-old mother-in-law who lives with me and an 85-year-old mother, is this whole thing around health and wellness and the aging population. And so, I would love, Monica, if you might share from your perspective relative to what your organization is doing to have that be a focus, a top of mind as a part of the strategic approach.
One of the things, Trudy, is you've got the conundrum of there's all these things changing and adapting so rapidly. But the reality is every day 10,000 new people, baby boomers, turn 65 years old.
Right.
So that's the group that has 50% of the discretionary spending, 60% of the OTC medicines, and 77% of the prescriptions. So while you're adapting to all those younger trends and things that are moving quickly, you can't walk away from the people who are actually paying the bills. So that's a big, tough thing. I think another thing for manufacturers and for retailers alike is in the elderly population, the baby boom population, and those even older than that, when they go to the hospital, 50% of them are malnourished. Now you look at that and you say that can't be possible, because you see we have an obesity problem. But the reality is, according to hospitalists, 50% of the people are coming in malnourished. And people don't identify them as malnourished because they're overweight. Right. So a great opportunity for all of us to produce healthy products Stop worrying about the low-fat craze followed by the low-carb craze. There's nothing left except protein, right? Once you've cut out those other things, and you got to have protein. So let's start looking at healthy fats and healthy, long-sustaining carbs combined with the right blend of proteins and get people healthy so that, in fact, they're not malnourished, they're less expensive to take care of.
I did not know that stat that you just put out there. John, in your research around the globe, who is the best of the best relative to the advancement in this particular health and wellness area?
I would say actually the U.S. is probably the farthest along. I mean, when you talk about the products, and I think products from a lot of the folks that are in this room, I think we were way on the front end in the U.S. around what we call nutraceuticals, so additives to add better attributes to products. And I think you're starting to see a better balance to your point about, I think there was a trend where it was taking out. You're seeing a lot more of adding in. To specifically speak to the statistic that you said, a product that's just growing like fire. I have an elderly in-law too, is a product called Ensure, right? Which is a calorie boost for people that get to a certain age that also has a high concentration of vitamin D, some other things. So I would say the science has never been better to understand the needs of that demographic, and you're starting to see people innovate and develop products that are tailored for that particular need state.
Well, I am so with you on the Ensure. I have to get, a couple of packs. For those of you who are not there, your day is coming. Just remember the way that Monica described us, baby boomers were the elderly. That's how we're being referred to now. Enjoy it. Okay, so.
I'm there too, Trudy.
But in the video, one of the clips was, about us being able to read, sort of be able to read the back of the packages. But it strikes me that then the pharmacy section of the footprint would have to expand in order to be able to provide all the nutrients and the supplements that we elderly baby boomer people are now seeking, right? Plus, we're over there to get anything that will help us stay young. And so, do you think that that's a trend that is going to become a reality? Anybody on the panel? More for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I'll speak on behalf of my supplier partners up here. They'd like me to expand every section of the store. You could ask the question about cereal. You could ask the question about, snacks. You could ask a question about anything. I do think what you're heading towards is, from a consumer point of view, health and wellness has taken a back seat over the last 2 or 3 years, not because it was out of mind, but because there was a bigger crisis on people's hands. This shifting of economic power has been such a ubiquitous trend and has impacted everyone regardless of income level in a way that's changed their behaviors, that it did take a little bit of a backslide. But you're starting to see now that, quote unquote, new normal is here, it coming back to the forefront. So I don't know that it's a larger pharmacy department per se. I think it is a more integrated store in which health and wellness plays out across multiple categories.
That's cool. Actually, I mean, I think your perspective is so well founded in that the consumer is now driving a new creation of the footprint, or what the footprint means to them, right, in terms of their experience. I mean, Carla, you've worked in a number of different businesses in worldwide view. A lot of what John shared in terms of people who are pioneering efforts came from the global side, right? I mean, you looked at one of the points that was made was Australia leading the way with some of the digital activities. What's your perspective, given that you lead a global organization, on how your company is wrapping its head around prioritizing these mega trends? What's important for you? What's at the top